So the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals just ruled in a huge case, which will likely have serious implications for the upcoming election. So let's talk about what is happening. Now, really quick before we jump into this video, I want to ask you guys for a huge favor. Looking at some of my analytics, about 60% of all my viewers, and especially new viewers, aren't subscribed to the channel. So if you like this type of content, make sure you share it, but also make sure you subscribe to the channel, and then also click the notification bell and turn on all notifications, because that ensures that YouTube will actually send you these videos. But regardless, thank you guys so much for all of your support. As I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be talking about a huge decision that just came out of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. This decision struck down a state law which allows for mail-in ballots which are sent on or before the election day and that are received and counted up to 5 days after the election. This is a huge ruling that has everybody talking, especially with the prior controversies surrounding the last election, and then also with the upcoming election that's just a few days out. A lot of people are talking about this decision and what it does. Now, this decision was issued by a 3-judge panel in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and it was authored by Judge Andrew Oldham, which many of you are aware that Judge Oldham is a judge that we like out of the Fifth Circuit. He's ruled in 2A cases and other cases like the Texas border dispute case against the Biden administration. Now, we need to do some background on what this case involves and what happens now procedurally going forward and what implications this could have for this election. Now, this ruling came in a case titled the Republican National Committee versus Wetzel. This was a lawsuit filed by the Republican National Committee, the Mississippi Republican Party, and then also the Mississippi Libertarian Party, along with 2 other private individuals against some various officials in the state of Mississippi. The plaintiffs sued various Mississippi officials over a law in Mississippi which authorized mail-in ballots to be accepted up to 5 days after the election. This suit sought an injunction against the mail-in ballot law based on the election law clause in the United States Constitution. So it's using the Constitution as a basis to say that this specific law in Mississippi is unconstitutional and preempted by federal law. Now, many of you are aware during the pandemic, various states, including Mississippi, amended their election laws to accept absentee ballots, which are postmarked on or before the date of the election and received by the register there no more than 5 days or 5 business days after the election. Now, one of the controversies is that Mississippi, despite the pandemic being over, the state has preserved that deadline and amended the statute to cover absentee ballots, which are transmitted by common carriers like FedEx and UPS, and then also the Postal Service. The argument by the plaintiffs is that this Mississippi law should be struck down as unconstitutional because under the United States Constitution and the text, precedent, and historical practice of our nation, that clearly shows that these types of ballots must be both cast by those voters and received by the state and the officials by the day of the election, not after. This lawsuit involves multiple cases which were consolidated and then reviewed by a federal district court in the state of Mississippi. In this case, there were cross motions for summary judgment, which simply means that both sides wanted the court here to rule entirely in their favor at an early stage of the case. And on review, the district court actually sided with the state of Mississippi and those officials, upholding this law in the state. Now, in response, the plaintiffs didn't appeal that decision, that ruling, up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and they were seeking a reversal of that decision, and they wanted a finding that this Mississippi law does in fact violate the Constitution and is invalid. Now, on review, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, and they agreed that this Mississippi law is in fact invalid, and they reversed what the lower court said. Citing Supreme Court precedent, the Fifth Circuit panel held that while states are empowered by Congress to conduct federal elections, federal laws preempt state regulation on elections. So they are using preemption, saying that the federal laws in the Constitution here in the United States says that the state of Mississippi cannot have this type of law. The court noted that Congress in 1845 fixed a uniform time for appointing presidential electors on the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. Then in 1872, Congress acted to require congressional elections to occur on the same day as the presidential election. Now, relying on the historical and legal precedent, the Fifth Circuit panel's decision explained it is obvious that a ballot is cast when the state takes custody of that ballot. They went on to state in their opinion that text, precedent, and historical practice confirm this day for election is the day by which ballots must be both cast by voters and received by the state officials. Because Mississippi statute allows ballot receipt up to 5 days after the federal election day, it is preempted by federal law. Now, Judge Oldham, writing for the court, stated that the Constitution struck a delicate balance between the state and federal power to regulate elections. The Elections Clause creates a default presumption of the state regulation, subject to Congress's powerful check. States can regulate many elements of the federal elections, but only so far as Congress declines to preempt state legislative choices. Congress retains the power under the Elections Clause to override state regulations by establishing uniform rules for federal elections binding on those states. When Congress exercises that power, any regulations it may make necessarily supersede inconsistent regulations of the states, given its paramount constitutional authority in this area. The question then, they said, is whether Mississippi's law is inconsistent with federal statutes establishing the date of the election. The court found that yes, it is inconsistent and therefore preempted by federal law. Judge Oldham stated in his opinion that history confirms that the election includes both ballot casting and ballot receipt. Here again, he is using a very strict analysis saying, does this law in Mississippi, is it consistent with our history, our tradition, and in any way does it contradict what our Constitution says? And is it preempted by the powers granted to Congress and what Congress has already done in this area of elections? And he found that yes, it does. The Fifth Circuit concluded their opinion by stating that, as Justice Kavanaugh recently emphasized, to state the obvious, a state cannot conduct an election without deadlines. A deadline is not unconstitutional merely because of voters' own failure to take timely steps to ensure their franchise. Federal law requires voters to take timely steps to vote by the election day, and federal law does not permit the state of Mississippi to extend the period for voting by 1 day, 5 days, or 100 days. The state's contrary law is preempted. And based on that, they reversed the district court's decision and vacated the district court's decision back down in part to them for a new decision in light of what they said in this ruling. So here you have the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals saying that it is not within the power of the state of Mississippi to extend the election deadline, the casting of ballots, and the counting of ballots beyond the election day. And here they are also citing to Kavanaugh, saying that Kavanaugh expressly also said that if someone is upset by the fact that they did not get their ballot in by the election day, well, that's on them. It's kind of too bad, so sad for you. You have the right to vote, of course, and whether or not you exercise that or not by the required deadline, that's on you. Now, you may be asking, what is the potential impact of this decision and what happens now with this case going forward? Well, right now, there's at least 20 states plus the District of Columbia, which currently accept mail-in ballots which are received after the election day. This decision by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals only applies to federal courts within their jurisdiction, so jurisdictions of the state of Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, the federal courts there. This ruling is not binding on any other circuit courts or any other states, but it can be used as strong persuasive evidence in any other lawsuits that pop up in those jurisdictions. And with the controversial elections that we've seen play out in just the last few elections, and probably a controversial election now coming up in just a few days, no doubt that you will have new lawsuits being filed, popping up, and then also likely citing directly to what the Fifth Circuit said here in this ruling. Now, in practicality, this decision by the Fifth Circuit will not take effect during this election, since the judgment simply remands the case back down to the circuit court, and a mandate has not been issued on this decision yet. Right now, the mandate will not issue until 7 days after the time has run for the defendants here in Mississippi to seek en banc panel review in the Fifth Circuit, or to go to the Supreme Court if they decide to do that instead. Right now, the state defendants have two options. They can seek en banc panel review in the Fifth Circuit, which is a review by the full Fifth Circuit panel of active judges in the Fifth Circuit, or they can bypass that and go immediately to the Supreme Court for a consideration of this Fifth Circuit ruling. But it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, and no doubt this will be cited in any future lawsuits which maybe are challenging what's going on in some states about counting ballots and voting and all that. I have no doubt that this Fifth Circuit decision will not only be litigated at a higher level, either at the Fifth Circuit or the Supreme Court, but also it's going to pop up in other lawsuits. So this is a very important ruling that was just issued. If you found this video helpful, make sure you share this video around. I know a lot of people are talking about this decision, and not everybody's breaking it down, actually looking at the documents, and not everybody who is an attorney and is going to review these documents and it can explain it to you guys. So if you found value in this video, share it around. If you guys like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of 2A news. But as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and never forget this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.